The soft glow of candlelight flickered across the elegant dining room of Milano's, one of the city's most exclusive restaurants. Isabella Martinez smoothed down her emerald green dress, the one she had saved for months to buy, and checked her reflection in the ornate mirror by the entrance. Tonight was supposed to be special. After 2 years of dating, she was certain David would finally propose. She spotted him immediately at their reserved table, his blonde hair perfectly styled, his expensive suit immaculate as always. David Richardson came from old money, the kind that opened doors and commanded respect. Isabella had always felt lucky that someone from his world had chosen her, a middle school teacher from a modest neighborhood. "David?" she said warmly, approaching the table with a bright smile. He looked up from his phone, barely acknowledging her presence. "You're 10 minutes late. I'm sorry, traffic was—" "Sit down." His tone was cold, distant, nothing like the charming man who had swept her off her feet 2 years ago. Isabella slid into her chair, her excitement dimming slightly. Maybe he was just nervous about the proposal. She had hinted enough times about wanting to take the next step, and he had seemed receptive. The waiter appeared instantly, the kind of service that money commanded. "Good evening. May I start you with some wine?" "The usual for me," David said without looking up from his phone. "She'll have water." Isabella's cheeks flushed. She had been looking forward to sharing a bottle of wine, to celebrating whatever news David had for her. "Actually, I'd love a glass of the Chianti." "Water," David repeated firmly to the waiter, who nodded and disappeared. An uncomfortable silence settled between them. Isabella fidgeted with her napkin, watching David scroll through his phone as if she weren't there. The romantic atmosphere she had imagined began to crumble around her. "David, is everything okay? You seem distant tonight." He finally looked up, his blue eyes cold and calculating. "We need to talk." Isabella's heart skipped. Here it comes, she thought. The proposal. Maybe he was just nervous. "I've been thinking a lot about us lately," he began, his voice clinical and detached. "About where this relationship is going." "Me too," Isabella said eagerly, reaching across the table for his hand. He pulled it away. "The thing is, Isabella, I'm at a point in my life where I need to make some strategic decisions. My father is grooming me to take over the company, and that comes with certain expectations." Isabella nodded, though a knot was forming in her stomach. "I understand. I've always supported your career. You don't understand." David's voice cut through her words like ice. "I'm expected to marry someone who can enhance the family's position, someone from the right background, with the right connections." The knot in Isabella's stomach tightened into a cold, hard ball of dread. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that while you're adequate for a casual relationship, you're not wife material, not for someone in my position." The words hit her like a physical blow. Isabella felt the blood drain from her face, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped the edge of the table. "Adequate?" David leaned back in his chair, his expression matter of fact. "Come on, Isabella. You're a school teacher from the wrong side of town. You drive a 10-year-old Honda and live in a studio apartment. You're pretty enough, but you don't have the refinement, the connections, or frankly, the breeding that my family expects." Each word was like a dagger to her heart. Isabella felt tears threatening to spill, but she fought them back. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her cry. 2 years, she whispered. "I've spent 2 years of my life with you, and they were pleasant years," David said with a dismissive wave. "But all good things must come to an end. I'm actually announcing my engagement next week." Isabella's world tilted. "Engagement? To Catherine Worthington. You might have heard of the family. They own half the commercial real estate in the city. It's a perfect match. Strategic, beneficial for both families." The restaurant suddenly felt too hot, too crowded, too bright. Isabella could barely breathe. "You've been planning this while we were together?" "Business is business, Isabella. Surely you understand that." She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Several nearby diners turned to look. "I understand perfectly. I understand that you're a coward and a user who wasted 2 years of my life." David's expression hardened. "Keep your voice down. You're making a scene." "A scene?" Isabella's voice rose despite herself. "You just told me I'm not good enough to marry because I don't have enough money or the right bloodline. And you're worried about a scene?" The entire restaurant was staring now. Isabella could feel dozens of eyes on her, watching her humiliation unfold in real time. She felt exposed, vulnerable, like a wounded animal in the middle of a spotlight. "This is exactly the kind of behavior I'm talking about," David said coldly. No class, no composure. A lady would handle this with dignity. The tears came then, hot and unstoppable. Isabella fumbled for her purse, her hands shaking so badly she could barely grip it. She needed to get out of there, needed to escape before she fell apart completely. Isabella, sit down and compose yourself, David hissed. People are staring. But Isabella was already walking away, practically running toward the exit. Behind her, she could hear David's voice, smooth and controlled, probably apologizing to the other diners for her emotional outburst. She made it to the ladies' room just before the sobs overtook her. Locking herself in a stall, she finally let herself fall apart. 2 years of love and dreams crashing down around her like shattered glass. From his corner table, Matteo Valentino watched the entire scene unfold with growing interest. He had noticed the woman the moment she walked in. Difficult not to, with her striking beauty and the way she carried herself with quiet confidence. The emerald dress complemented her olive skin and dark hair perfectly, and there was something genuinely warm about her smile when she first approached her companion. That warmth had died quickly enough. Matteo had excellent hearing, a skill that had kept him alive in his line of work, and he had caught every cruel word the blonde man had spoken. Each calculated insult, each deliberate humiliation, each strategic blow designed to tear down a woman who had clearly loved him. As the head of the Valentino crime family, Matteo had seen his share of cruelty. He had, admittedly, been responsible for some of it himself when business demanded it. But there was something particularly repugnant about watching a man destroy an innocent woman simply because he could, simply because she wasn't useful to him anymore. The way she had fought back, even through her tears, that had impressed him. Many people crumbled under that kind of emotional assault, but she had found her voice, had called the bastard out for what he was. She had dignity, even in her pain. When she fled toward the restroom, Matteo found himself standing without conscious thought. His bodyguard, Tony, looked up in surprise from his position by the wall. "Boss, find out everything you can about the woman in green," Matteo said quietly. "Her name, where she lives, where she works, everything. Right away, boss." Matteo's dark eyes returned to the blonde man, who was now calmly cutting his steak as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't just systematically destroyed another human being for the crime of being beneath his social status. David Richardson. Matteo knew the name, knew the family. Old money, legitimate business, the kind of people who looked down on men like Matteo while secretly envying his power. They played by different rules, more subtle perhaps, but no less ruthless. The difference was that Matteo owned his darkness. He didn't pretend to be something he wasn't. His phone buzzed. A text from his lieutenant, Marco. "The Brennan situation is handled, awaiting further instructions." Matteo pocketed the phone without responding. Business could wait. For the first time in years, something else had captured his attention. 20 minutes later, the woman, Isabella, according to Tony's quick research, emerged from the restroom. Her eyes were red, but she had composed herself, repairing her makeup as best she could. She walked past Richardson's table without a glance, her head held high despite the curious stares of other diners. Richardson didn't even look up from his meal. Matteo felt a surge of anger that surprised him with its intensity. He was not a man given to emotional reactions, but something about this woman's quiet dignity in the face of such cruelty touched something deep inside him that he had thought long dead. He watched her disappear through the front entrance, then signaled for his check. The night was far from over. Isabella sat in her car in the restaurant parking lot, gripping the steering wheel as she tried to stop shaking. The tears had finally stopped, leaving her feeling hollow and exhausted. 2 years. 2 years of believing she was building a life with someone, only to discover she had been nothing more than a placeholder until someone better came along. The worst part wasn't even the breakup. It was the way he had done it. The calculated cruelty, the public humiliation, the casual dismissal of everything they had shared, as if she were nothing more than an inconvenience to be discarded. Her phone buzzed, a text from her best friend Sarah. "How did dinner go? Did he propose? I'm dying to know." Isabella stared at the message, fresh tears threatening. How could she even begin to explain what had just happened? The excited emojis in Sarah's text felt like they were mocking her now. She was about to start the engine when a tap on her passenger window made her jump. A tall man in an expensive-looking dark coat was standing beside her car, his face partially obscured by shadow. Isabella's first instinct was panic. It was late, the parking lot was dimly lit, and she was alone and vulnerable. But something about the man's posture seemed more protective than threatening. He stepped back when he saw her startled reaction, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. Against her better judgment, she rolled down the window a few inches. "I'm sorry to bother you," he said, his voice deep and accented. Italian, she thought. "I was at the restaurant. I saw what happened." Isabella felt heat flood her cheeks. Great. Even strangers had witnessed her humiliation. "I'm fine," she said quickly. "Thank you, but I'm fine." "No," he said gently. "You're not, and that's okay." Something in his tone, understanding without pity, kindness without condescension, made her look at him more carefully. Even in the dim light, she could see he was strikingly handsome, with dark hair and intense eyes. There was something about him that radiated power and confidence, but also gentleness. "I don't usually approach women in parking lots," he continued with a slight smile, "but I wanted to make sure you were safe to drive. That was, a difficult scene." Isabella laughed bitterly. "Difficult. That's one way to put it." "He's a fool," the man said simply. The words shouldn't have meant anything coming from a stranger, but somehow they did. When was the last time anyone had defended her, had taken her side without knowing the whole story? "You don't even know me," Isabella said. "I know enough. I know that you deserved better than what happened in there, and I know that his loss is someone else's gain." Isabella found herself studying his face more carefully. There was something magnetic about him, something that drew her attention despite her emotional exhaustion. "Why do you care what happens to a stranger?" He was quiet for a moment, as if considering his answer carefully. "Maybe because I recognize strength when I see it. The way you handled yourself in there, many people would have crumbled. You stood up for yourself, even when you were hurting. I fell apart completely. No, you felt everything, and you still found your voice." "That's not falling apart. That's being human." Isabella felt tears threatening again, but this time they weren't entirely from pain. When was the last time someone had spoken to her with such genuine respect? "I should go," she said, though she found herself reluctant to end the conversation. "Of course, but—" He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. "If you need anything, a friend, someone to listen, or just somewhere safe to go, please call me." Isabella took the card with trembling fingers. It was heavy, expensive paper with elegant lettering, Matteo Valentino, and a phone number. No business name or title. "What kind of work do you do, Mr. Valentino?" His smile was enigmatic. "I solve problems." Before she could ask what that meant, he stepped back from her car. "Get home safely, Isabella." It wasn't until she was halfway home that she realized she had never told him her name. Back in his penthouse office, Matteo sat behind his mahogany desk, reviewing the information Tony had gathered on Isabella Martinez. The file was surprisingly thin, a testament to how ordinary and law-abiding her life was. 28 years old, born and raised in the city. Bachelor's degree in education from the State University, master's degree earned while working full-time. Currently employed at Jefferson Middle School, where she taught 7th grade English and ran an after-school tutoring program for struggling students. No criminal record, not even a parking ticket. Volunteered at a local women's shelter on weekends. Had been dating David Richardson for 2 years. Lived alone in a studio apartment in a decent but modest neighborhood. The photos Tony had included showed a woman who looked younger than her years, with warm brown eyes and an infectious smile. In several pictures, she was surrounded by her students, and even in the grainy surveillance photos, it was clear they adored her. "She's clean as a whistle, boss," Tony reported from his chair across the desk. "Salt of the earth type. Works with kids, helps people. Pays her taxes on time. About as far from our world as you can get." That was exactly what made her so appealing, Matteo thought. In his world, everyone wanted something. Everyone had an angle, a scheme, a way they were trying to use him or position themselves for advantage. But Isabella Martinez had no idea who he was, had no reason to pretend with him. Her reaction to him in the parking lot had been genuine. Cautious but not terrified, grateful but not fawning. She had treated him like a human being, not a commodity to be traded or a threat to be neutralized. "What about Richardson?" Matteo asked. "Typical rich boy prick," Tony said with distaste. "Trust fund baby. Never worked a real day in his life. Daddy owns Richardson Industries, shipping and logistics. Clean on the surface. but they've been known to turn a blind eye to what gets shipped as long as the price is right. Mateo made a mental note. Useful information for the future. The girl he's engaged to, Catherine Worthington. Her family owns half the commercial real estate in the financial district. It's definitely a business merger disguised as a marriage. Find out more about Richardson's business dealings, Mateo instructed. I want to know everything. Who he owes money to, who owes him money, where the skeletons are buried. Tony raised an eyebrow. We moving against the Richardson family, boss? Not necessarily. I just like to be prepared. It was a lie, and they both knew it. Mateo was planning something. He just wasn't sure what yet. All he knew was that watching Isabella's humiliation had awakened something in him that had been dormant for years. A desire to protect, to defend, to be something more than just a weapon in an expensive suit. His phone rang. Marco. The Brennan shipment is ready for pickup, his lieutenant reported. Everything went smooth. Good. Any word from the Chicago family? Nothing yet, but Vincent says they're getting nervous about the territory expansion. Might need to have a conversation soon. Mateo listened with half his attention, his eyes still on Isabella's file. Such different worlds. Hers, filled with lesson plans and struggling students and volunteer work. His filled with territory disputes and conversations that often ended with someone in the hospital. What was he thinking? A woman like Isabella would run screaming if she knew what he really did for a living. She was sunshine and he was shadow, oil and water, predator and prey. But the memory of her dignity in the face of cruelty, the way she had refused to be broken even when she was breaking, that stayed with him. He had spent so many years surrounded by people who bent and broke and begged when pressure was applied. Her strength was like finding a diamond in a pile of broken glass. After Marco hung up, Mateo sat in the silence of his office, city lights twinkling beyond his floor-to-ceiling windows. He thought about Isabella driving home alone to her studio apartment, probably crying again now that there was no one to witness it. He thought about Richardson, probably at some exclusive club celebrating his strategic engagement with his equally cold fiancée. He thought about justice and revenge, and the way Isabella had looked when she realized the man she loved thought she wasn't good enough for him. By the time he finally went to bed, Mateo had made a decision. He was going to see Isabella Martinez again, and David Richardson was going to regret the day he decided to humiliate an innocent woman. 3 days later, Isabella was walking home from school when she noticed the black sedan following her. It stayed exactly 3 cars behind, making the same turns she did, maintaining the same speed. Her heart rate picked up as memories of every crime show she'd ever watched flooded her mind. She ducked into Tony's coffee shop on 5th Street, a little family-owned place where she sometimes graded papers. Through the window, she watched the sedan drive past without stopping. Probably just her paranoia, she told herself. The humiliation at the restaurant had left her feeling exposed and vulnerable. "The usual, honey?" asked Maria, the owner's wife, from behind the counter. "Please," Isabella said, still watching the street nervously. She found a corner table and pulled out her laptop, determined to focus on her lesson plans for the next week. Her students were starting a unit on poetry, and she wanted to find pieces that would speak to them, that would help them understand that words could be powerful tools for expression and healing. She was so absorbed in her work that she didn't notice someone approaching her table until a familiar accented voice said, "Isabella." She looked up to find Matteo Valentino standing beside her, looking impossibly elegant in a charcoal gray suit. He was even more handsome than she remembered, with those intense dark eyes and the kind of confident presence that made everyone else in the room seem to fade into the background. "Mr. Valentino," she said, startled. "What are you doing here? I was in the neighborhood and saw you through the window. I hope you don't mind if I join you for a moment." Before she could answer, he was sliding into the seat across from her, his movements fluid and controlled. Maria appeared instantly at their table, the kind of service that money and presence commanded. "Can I get you anything, sir?" she asked, clearly impressed by this well-dressed stranger. "Espresso, please," Matteo said with a warm smile that transformed his entire face. After Maria left, an awkward silence settled between them. Isabella found herself studying his hands, strong, elegant, with a subtle scar across the knuckles of his right hand. Everything about him suggested power and danger, but his eyes when he looked at her were gentle. "How are you doing?" he asked quietly. Isabella laughed bitterly. "You mean since my boyfriend of 2 years told me I wasn't good enough to marry in front of a restaurant full of people? I've been better. Have you spoken to him since? He called once, to get his jacket back from my apartment. She tried to keep her voice light, but the hurt was still there. Very romantic, don't you think? Mateo's expression darkened. I'm sorry. You deserved better. Everyone keeps saying that, Isabella said, closing her laptop. But maybe David was right. Maybe I was fooling myself thinking someone from his world could really love someone from mine. His world? Mateo leaned forward slightly. What world is that? You know, money, connections, the right family name. I'm just a teacher from a middle-class family. My parents are good people, but they're not anybody important. My dad fixes cars, and my mom works at the hospital. I live in a studio apartment and drive a car that's older than some of my students. And you think that makes you worth less than him? Isabella shrugged. According to him, it does. Then he's blind as well as cruel. The intensity in Mateo's voice made her look up sharply. There was something almost dangerous in his expression, quickly hidden but unmistakably there. You don't even know me, she said. I know you're a teacher who cares enough about her students to stay after school to tutor them. I know you volunteer at a women's shelter on weekends. I know you handled one of the most humiliating experiences a person can go through with more grace than most people could manage. Isabella stared at him. How do you know about the tutoring and the shelter work? Mateo's espresso arrived, buying him a moment. Isabella noticed he didn't answer her question directly. I make it my business to know about people who interest me, he said finally. Interest you how? Another pause. Isabella was beginning to realize that Matteo Valentino was a man who chose his words very carefully. You're different, he said eventually. In a world full of people who want something from everyone they meet, you're refreshingly genuine. You still haven't told me what you do for a living. Matteo smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm in import-export, family business. Something about the way he said it made Isabella think there was much more to the story. But before she could probe further, her phone rang. The school's number. I'm sorry, I have to take this, she said, answering quickly. Hello? Ms. Martinez? This is Principal Henderson. I'm afraid I have some bad news. Isabella's stomach dropped. What happened? There's been an incident involving one of your students, Jamie Rodriguez. He was arrested this afternoon for vandalism. His grandmother called asking if you could meet them at the juvenile center. Isabella closed her eyes. Jamie was one of her brightest students, but he came from a troubled home and had been acting out lately. She had been working with him after school, trying to channel his intelligence into productive outlets. Of course, she said immediately. I'll be right there. She hung up and looked apologetically at Matteo. I'm sorry, but I have to go. One of my students is in trouble. At this hour? Matteo checked his watch. It's almost 7. Doesn't matter, Isabella said, already packing up her laptop. He needs help. Matteo studied her face, seeing the genuine concern there, the immediate willingness to drop everything for a child who needed her. In his world, loyalty was bought and sold, often temporary and always conditional. This woman's loyalty seemed to come from somewhere deeper. Let me drive you, he offered. That's not necessary. Isabella. The way he said her name stopped her protests. It's getting dark. You're upset, and you shouldn't be driving alone to a juvenile detention center at night. Please, let me help. There was something in his tone that brooked no argument, but also something protective that made her feel safer than she had in days. Against her better judgment, she nodded. Okay, thank you. As they left the coffee shop together, Isabella didn't notice the black sedan that pulled away from the curb and began following them at a discreet distance. But Matteo did. The juvenile detention center was a stark institutional building that looked exactly like what it was, a place where childhood dreams came to die. Isabella had been there before, unfortunately, trying to help other students who had gotten caught up in the system. Matteo's car was exactly what she would have expected, a sleek black Mercedes with leather interior and the kind of sound system that cost more than she made in 6 months. But she barely noticed the luxury. Her mind was focused on Jamie and what might have led to this. Tell me about this student, Matteo said as they pulled into the parking lot. Jamie Rodriguez, 13 years old, lives with his grandmother because his parents are not in the picture. He's brilliant, reads at a high school level, incredible with mathematics, but he's angry. The world has disappointed him so many times already. Isabella's voice was soft with genuine affection and concern. Matteo found himself once again struck by her immediate empathy for others, even when her own world had just fallen apart. What kind of vandalism? I don't know yet. But whatever it was, it's not who he really is. He's just lost right now. Inside the detention center, they were directed to a waiting room where a small, elderly Latina woman sat wringing her hands. Her eyes were red from crying, and she looked up hopefully when Isabella entered. "Ms. Martinez, thank God you came." She spoke in rapid Spanish, and Isabella responded in kind, her fluency surprising Mateo. He understood enough to catch that the woman was Jamie's grandmother, and that she was terrified about what would happen to her grandson. "Mrs. Rodriguez, this is my friend Mateo," Isabella said, switching back to English. "He drove me here. Has anyone explained what happened? They say he spray-painted a building downtown, but Ms. Martinez, Jamie is a good boy. He wouldn't do this for no reason." A uniformed officer approached them. "Are you here for the Rodriguez boy?" "Yes," Isabella said immediately. "I'm his teacher. Can I see him?" The officer looked skeptical. "Visiting hours are—" "Officer." Mateo stood up, and something about his presence made the man pause. He didn't raise his voice or make any threats, but suddenly the atmosphere in the room shifted. Authority radiated from him like heat from a fire. "The boy's teacher is here to help. Surely that's in everyone's best interest." The officer studied Mateo's face, taking in the expensive suit, the confident posture, the way he spoke with the expectation of being obeyed. Whatever he saw there made him nod slowly. "I'll see what I can do." 15 minutes later, Isabella was sitting across from Jamie in a small interview room. The 13-year-old looked younger than usual in the oversized detention center jumpsuit, his dark hair falling into his eyes as he stared at the table. "Want to tell me what happened?" Isabella asked gently. Jamie shrugged, not looking up. "Does it matter? Everyone's already decided I'm just another gang kid from the barrio. I haven't decided anything. And I know you're not a gang kid. The building I tagged, it was Richardson Industries." Isabella felt her blood chill. "What?" "That company downtown, the one with the big glass building. I saw you crying the other day after school, and Maria at the corner store said some rich guy broke your heart, so I looked him up online." Isabella stared at him in shock. "Jamie, you didn't—" "I was just angry, okay? You're the only teacher who ever gave a damn about any of us, and some rich asshole hurt you. So I went to his building and spray-painted coward across the front entrance." Isabella put her head in her hands. This sweet, brilliant boy had thrown away his future, trying to defend her honor. The weight of guilt was crushing. "Ms. Martinez?" Jamie looked up for the first time, his young face full of concern. "Are you okay? I didn't mean to make you sad." "Oh, Jamie." Isabella reached across the table and took his hands. "I'm not sad because of what you did. I'm sad because you think so little of your own future that you'd risk it for me." "My future?" Jamie laughed bitterly. "What future? I'm a kid from the projects with no money and no connections. I was never going to amount to anything anyway." "That's not true." "It is true. Look around you, Ms. Martinez." "You think any of us are getting out? You think college and careers and all that stuff you talk about in class are really options for kids like me?" Isabella felt tears threatening. Because the truth was, the system was stacked against kids like Jamie. Brilliant, passionate, capable kids who happened to be born in the wrong zip code to the wrong families. The door opened and Mateo entered, nodding to the guard who let him in. He sat down beside Isabella and studied Jamie with intense dark eyes. "You must be Jamie," he said. "I'm Mateo." Jamie eyed him suspiciously. "You a cop?" "No." "Lawyer?" "No." "Then what do you want?" Mateo leaned forward slightly. "I want to understand why an intelligent young man would throw away his advantages to spray paint a building." "Advantages?" Jamie snorted. "What advantages? You have a teacher who cares about you enough to come here at night when you're in trouble. You have a grandmother who loves you. You have a mind that can solve problems most adults can't handle. Those are considerable advantages." Jamie was quiet, clearly not expecting this response. "But you're right about one thing," Mateo continued. "The system is designed to work against people like you. The question is, are you going to let it win? Easy for you to say. You're obviously rich. I am now. I wasn't always." Mateo's voice was quiet but carried the weight of truth. "I grew up in a neighborhood not unlike yours. The difference is that when I was your age, I made different choices about how to fight the system." Isabella found herself studying Mateo's profile, hearing something in his voice she hadn't noticed before. The echo of old pain, old anger, old hunger. "What kind of choices?" Jamie asked, despite himself. "The kind that require patience, long-term thinking, the ability to play a longer game than your enemies expect. Isabella wasn't entirely sure what he meant by that, but Jamie seemed to understand something in Mateo's tone that she didn't. Ms. Martinez says I could get a scholarship to college, Jamie said quietly. Ms. Martinez is right, but not if you have a criminal record. The boy's shoulders slumped. Too late for that now. Mateo exchanged a look with Isabella, then stood up. Wait here, both of you. Before either of them could ask what he meant, he was gone. 20 minutes later, Mateo returned with the arresting officer and a man in an expensive suit who introduced himself as the building's head of security. Mr. Rodriguez, the security chief said formally, Richardson Industries has decided not to press charges. Isabella's mouth fell open. Jamie looked stunned. What? The teenager managed. The damage to the building was minimal and easily repaired. Given your age and your teacher's testimony about your character, we're willing to consider this a misunderstanding. However, you will need to perform 40 hours of community service. After the officials left and the paperwork was completed, Isabella found herself walking out of the detention center with Jamie and his grandmother, still in shock about how quickly everything had been resolved. I don't understand, she said to Mateo as they stood in the parking lot. How did you? I made some phone calls, he said simply. To who? What kind of import-export business gives you that kind of influence with? Isabella stopped mid-sentence as understanding began to dawn. The expensive suit, the luxury car, the way people deferred to him, the mysterious phone calls, the casual wielding of power. You're not in import-export, are you? She said quietly. Mateo met her eyes steadily. Not exactly. Jamie's grandmother was hugging her grandson, speaking rapidly in Spanish about second chances and guardian angels. Jamie himself was staring at Mateo with a mixture of awe and confusion. What do you really do? Isabella asked. Mateo was quiet for a long moment, weighing his words carefully. Around them, the parking lot was mostly empty, except for the security lights and the distant hum of traffic. I run a family business, he said finally. We provide services that others can't or won't provide. We solve problems that the legitimate world prefers to ignore. What kind of problems? Another pause. The kind that sometimes require unconventional solutions. Isabella stared at him, pieces clicking into place. The way he carried himself, the deference he commanded, the casual mention of solving problems, the ability to make criminal charges disappear with a few phone calls. She couldn't bring herself to say it. I'm a man who just helped your student avoid a criminal record, Mateo said gently. Everything else is just details. Isabel felt like the ground was shifting beneath her feet. 3 days ago, she had thought her biggest problem was dating a man who valued money over love. Now, she was apparently being helped by a man who operated outside the law entirely. I need to go home, she said suddenly. Mateo nodded. Of course, I'll drive you. No. Isabella's voice was sharper than she intended. I'll take a cab. She saw something flicker in Mateo's expression. Hurt, maybe, or disappointment. But he didn't argue. As you wish. Isabella turned to Jamie and his grandmother, hugging them both. Go straight home, she told Jamie. And come see me after school tomorrow. We need to talk about your future. As the taxi pulled away from the juvenile center, Isabella watched through the rear window as Mateo stood under the security lights, his hands in his pockets, watching her leave. Even from a distance, he looked powerful and dangerous and somehow lonely. Her phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Haven't heard from you since the dinner disaster. Are you okay? Call me. Isabella stared at the message, unsure how to even begin explaining the last few days. How could she tell Sarah that she had gone from being humiliated by one man to being mysteriously helped by another who might be involved in organized crime? As the taxi wound through the city streets toward her apartment, Isabella found herself thinking about the way Mateo had looked at Jamie, not with pity or condescension, but with understanding and respect. The way he had spoken to the boy about playing a longer game, about not letting the system win. Whatever else he might be, Mateo Valentino had just saved a 13-year-old's future. That had to count for something. The next morning brought unexpected visitors to Isabella's classroom. She was setting up for her first period when Principal Henderson appeared in her doorway with 2 men in dark suits. Ms. Martinez, these gentlemen would like to speak with you about the incident last night. Isabella's heart sank. Federal agents, probably. Had Mateo's intervention somehow made things worse? I'm Detective Morrison, NYPD. the older man said, showing his badge. "This is Detective Chen. We understand you were at the juvenile center last night regarding Jamie Rodriguez." "Yes," Isabella said carefully. "He's my student. I was there to support him and his family. We're curious about your companion, a Mr. Matteo Valentino." Isabella kept her expression neutral, despite her racing pulse. "He's a friend who gave me a ride." "Is there a problem?" Detective Morrison and Detective Chen exchanged glances. "Ms. Martinez, we need you to understand that Matteo Valentino is not just any businessman. He's the head of one of the most powerful crime families in the city." Even though she had suspected as much, hearing it confirmed out loud made Isabella's knees weak. She sank into her desk chair. The Valentino family controls significant portions of the import-export business, along with various other enterprises. Detective Chen continued. "They're connected to everything from money laundering to racketeering to murder." "Murder," Isabella whispered. "We're not saying Valentino himself has killed anyone," Detective Morrison clarified. "But people in his position don't stay in power by being gentle. We need to know why he's suddenly interested in a middle school teacher and one of her students." Isabella thought about Jamie, free and back in school instead of facing juvenile detention. Whatever Matteo's methods, the result had been good for an innocent child. "I don't know why he helped," she said honestly. "But Jamie is a good kid who made one mistake. If Mr. Valentino was able to prevent that mistake from ruining his life, then I'm grateful." "Ms. Martinez," Detective Morrison leaned forward. "Men like Valentino don't do favors without expecting something in return. Whatever he wants from you, whatever he's offered you, it's not worth getting involved in his world." "I understand your concern," Isabella said, "but I haven't done anything illegal, and neither has my student. If that's all." The detectives left her with their business cards and stern warnings about staying away from Matteo Valentino. Isabella spent the rest of the morning distracted, barely focusing on her lessons as her mind churned with questions and doubts. When Jamie appeared after school for his usual tutoring session, he seemed different, more focused, more hopeful than she had seen him in months. "Ms. Martinez, I've been thinking about what Mr. Valentino said last night, about playing the long game." "What about it?" "I want to take the SAT prep course you mentioned, and I want to apply for that summer program at Columbia." Isabella felt her heart lift despite everything else that was happening. "Jamie, that's wonderful. Those are both excellent choices. I know I messed up yesterday, but maybe it's not too late to fix things. Mr. Valentino said the system is designed to work against people like me, but that doesn't mean I have to let it win." As Isabella helped Jamie work through algebra problems, she found herself thinking about Matteo's words. Whatever else he might be, he had inspired a brilliant young man to believe in his own future. That had to be worth something. After Jamie left, Isabella sat alone in her empty classroom grading papers and trying to make sense of her feelings. 3 men had shaped her week. David, who had crushed her heart with casual cruelty. Matteo, who had helped her and Jamie but might be dangerous. And now Jamie himself, who was showing her what real strength looked like. Her phone rang. An unknown number. "Hello? Isabella, it's Matteo." Her pulse quickened at the sound of his voice. "How did you get this number? I wanted to make sure you were all right after last night, and to apologize if I made you uncomfortable." Isabella looked around her empty classroom, making sure no one could overhear. "The police came to see me today. They told me who you really are." A long pause. "I see. Is it true? Are you really the head of a crime family?" "Yes." The simple honesty of his answer somehow made it worse. Isabella had been hoping for denials, explanations, some way to rationalize away what she had learned. "I should hang up," she said. "Yes, you probably should." "Then why aren't I?" Another pause. "Maybe for the same reason I called. Maybe because what happened between us felt real, and real connections are rare in this world." Isabella closed her eyes, fighting against the pull she felt toward this man who had shown her more genuine kindness in 3 encounters than David had in 2 years. "You're dangerous," she said. "To my enemies, yes. To you, never." "How can you promise that? You live in a world of violence and crime. How can anyone around you be truly safe?" "They can't," Matteo said quietly. "That's why I should stay away from you. Why I called to say goodbye instead of asking to see you again." "Goodbye? You deserve a normal life, Isabella. A safe life. You deserve someone who can take you to dinner without worrying about who might be watching. Someone who can protect you without having to threaten others. Someone whose business dealings you can discuss at PTA meetings. Isabella found herself gripping the phone tighter. What if I don't want normal? The words were out before she could stop them, surprising them both. What did you say? Isabella paused, hardly believing she was about to say this. David was normal, respectable, safe, and he treated me like I was disposable. You've known me for 3 days, and you've shown me more respect and kindness than he did in 2 years. Isabella, I'm not saying I want to be part of your world, she continued quickly. I'm not naive about what you do, but I'm also not sure I want to go back to dating accountants and lawyers who think I'm not good enough for them. Matteo was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. What are you saying? I'm saying, maybe we could have coffee again, talk, figure out if there's something real here or if it's just two broken people finding each other at the right moment. I'm not broken, Matteo said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. No? Then what are you? Lonely, which might be worse. Isabella felt her heart skip. Coffee, tomorrow, the same place. Are you sure? No, but I'm sure I want to find out. After they hung up, Isabella sat in the gathering dusk of her classroom, wondering what she was getting herself into. Outside, the first snow of winter was beginning to fall, and she watched the flakes swirl in the light from the street lamps. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. There's a car outside your building tonight. My driver will make sure you get home safely. You don't have to acknowledge him or speak to him. Just know that you're protected. M. Isabella looked out the window and saw a black sedan parked across from the school entrance. As she gathered her things and headed for the door, she realized that her quiet, predictable life had officially become anything but normal. And for the first time since David had humiliated her, she wasn't entirely sure that was a bad thing. The next evening, Isabella found herself once again sitting across from Matteo at Tony's coffee shop, but this time the dynamic was different. Now she knew who he was, what he represented, and the implications of being seen with him. You look nervous, Matteo observed, stirring sugar into his espresso. I am nervous. I've never knowingly had coffee with someone who, she lowered her voice, runs a crime family. I prefer businessman with unconventional methods, Matteo said with a slight smile. Despite everything, Isabella found herself smiling back. Is that what you tell yourself? Sometimes. Other times I'm more honest about what I am. Which is? Matteo was quiet for a moment, studying her face. A man who was born into a world where violence is currency and loyalty is survival. A man who learned early that the legitimate world has its own forms of corruption. They're just better at hiding it behind legal paperwork. That sounds like justification. Maybe it is, or maybe it's just reality. He leaned forward slightly. Your ex-boyfriend's family made their fortune shipping cargo they knew contained human trafficking victims. They looked the other way because the money was good. How is that morally superior to what I do? Isabella stared at him. Is that true? Would you like me to show you the evidence? The casual way he said it made Isabella believe he actually had evidence. The thought made her sick. Had she been dating someone connected to human trafficking without knowing it? I don't understand this world, she said quietly. Good. The fact that you don't understand it, that you're naturally horrified by it, is what makes you different. It's what makes you valuable. Valuable to whom? Matteo's dark eyes met hers. To me. The simple honesty of his words sent heat through Isabella's chest. There was no manipulation in his voice, no calculation, just truth. Tell me about your family, she said, changing the subject before she could get lost in those eyes. My father built the business from nothing. He came here from Italy with no money and no connections, just intelligence and determination. He saw opportunities where others saw obstacles. And you inherited the business. I inherited the responsibility. The business I built myself, expanding it beyond what my father ever imagined. Isabella could hear the pride in his voice, mixed with something else, burden maybe, or loneliness. Do you have siblings? A younger sister, Sophia. She lives in California, as far from this world as I could send her. She thinks I'm a legitimate businessman who imports wine and olive oil. You protected her from the truth. I protected her from me. The pain in his voice was unmistakable. She deserves a normal life. A safe life. The kind of life you deserve. Isabella reached across the table and touched his hand. The contact sent electricity up her arm, and she saw his eyes widen slightly at her touch. Maybe that's not your choice to make for me, she said softly. Mateo stared down at their joined hands. His were larger than hers, scarred in places, capable of terrible things, but his touch was gentle. Isabella, you need to understand something. In my world, everyone is either an asset or a liability. Everyone wants something. Everyone has an angle. I have spent my entire adult life surrounded by people who would sell me out for the right price. And you're different. You don't want anything from me. You don't even particularly like what I represent. But you're sitting here anyway, and I can't figure out why. Isabella considered his words. Why was she here? What was she hoping to find with this dangerous, complicated man? Maybe because you see me, she said finally. Really see me. Not as a placeholder until someone better comes along. Not as a charity case to be managed. Just me. When was the last time someone looked at you that way? Mateo was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was rough. I don't remember. Then maybe we both need this. Whatever this is. Before Mateo could respond, Isabella's phone rang. The school's number again. I'm sorry, I have to... She answered quickly. Hello? Ms. Martinez, this is Principal Henderson. I'm calling because we've had an incident involving Jamie Rodriguez again. Isabella's heart sank. What happened? He got into a fight after school. The other boy is claiming Jamie started it, but Jamie won't say what the fight was about. Both boys are in my office with their parents. Can you come in? Isabella was already standing. I'll be right there. She hung up and looked apologetically at Mateo. I'm sorry, but Jamie is in trouble again. I heard. Mateo was already pulling out his wallet. Let me drive you. You don't have to, Isabella. His voice was firm but gentle. Let me help. This time, she didn't argue. At the school, they found Jamie sitting outside the principal's office with a split lip and bruised knuckles. His grandmother sat beside him, looking worried and exhausted. Across the hall, another boy sat with his parents, a well-dressed couple who were speaking in low, angry tones to Principal Henderson. Jamie, what happened? Isabella asked, kneeling beside her student. The boy looked up at her with defiant eyes. Tommy Brennan was saying stuff, bad stuff, about you. Isabella's heart sank. About me. He said his dad heard you were dating some criminal. Said you were probably a criminal too, and that's why you always stick up for kids like me. Said you were just as dirty as the rest of us. Isabella felt heat flood her cheeks. Word was already spreading about her connection to Mateo, putting her job and reputation at risk. So you hit him, she said quietly. He was disrespecting you, Ms. Martinez. You're the best person I know. I couldn't just let him say that stuff. Isabella looked at this boy who had risked his freedom to defend her honor, just as he had spray-painted David's building for the same reason. Her heart broke a little more. Jamie, you can't fight every battle for me. Why not? You fight battles for us every day. Before Isabella could respond, she heard Mateo speaking quietly to Principal Henderson and the other parents. She couldn't make out the words, but she saw the other father's face go pale, saw him nod quickly, and pull his wife and son toward the exit. Principal Henderson approached them, looking confused but relieved. Ms. Martinez, it seems the Brennan family has decided not to pursue any disciplinary action. They're also considering transferring Tommy to a different school. Isabella stared at Mateo, who was now crouching down to Jamie's level. That was a brave thing you did, he told the boy. Standing up for someone you care about takes courage. But next time, try using your intelligence first. It's a more powerful weapon than your fists. What do you mean? Information is power. If someone is spreading lies about Ms. Martinez, find out why. Who told them these lies? What do they hope to gain? Then you can fight back with facts instead of fists. Jamie nodded slowly, clearly processing this advice. After Jamie and his grandmother left, Isabella found herself alone in the hallway with Mateo. What did you say to them? She asked. I explained that spreading rumors about a dedicated teacher could have consequences. I may have mentioned that the Brennan family's construction business depends on city contracts, and that city contracts can be influenced by the right people. Isabella stared at him. You threatened them. I provided context for their decision-making process. Mateo, you can't solve every problem with intimidation, can I? He stepped closer to her, his voice dropping. That boy was willing to throw away his future to defend your honor. Twice now. Don't you think you deserve people fighting for you? Not like this. Not with threats and violence and... Isabella. His voice was gentle but firm. In my world, respect is earned through strength. The weak get devoured by the strong. I won't let anyone devour you. Isabella felt tears threatening. I can't be responsible for you hurting people because of me. You're not responsible for my choices. I am. And I choose to protect the people I care about. People you care about? Matteo cupped her face gently in his hands. Yes, people I care about, whether that's wise or not. Looking into his dark eyes, Isabella felt something shift between them. This wasn't just attraction or curiosity anymore. This was something deeper, more dangerous, and infinitely more complicated. This is insane, she whispered. Probably. You're a criminal. Yes. I'm a school teacher. Yes. This could never work. Probably not. Then why does it feel like the first real thing that's happened to me in years? Instead of answering, Matteo leaned down and kissed her. It was soft at first, tentative, giving her a chance to pull away. When she didn't, when she melted against him instead, the kiss deepened. Isabella had been kissed before, but never like this. Never with such intensity, such reverence, as if she were something precious and rare. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Isabella, Matteo said quietly, his forehead resting against hers. I know this is crazy. If you want to walk away, now is the time. Before this goes any further. Before you get in so deep that my world becomes your world. Isabella looked at him. This dangerous, powerful man who had shown her more genuine care and protection than anyone ever had. She thought about David, about the humiliation and the coldness and the way he had made her feel worthless. She thought about the life she had been living, safe, predictable, lonely. What if I don't want to walk away? Then God help us both. This time, when he kissed her, Isabella kissed him back with everything she had. 2 weeks later, Isabella's life had become something she wouldn't have recognized a month earlier. She was still teaching, still tutoring Jamie and her other students, still volunteering at the shelter. But now there was Matteo. He picked her up from school in different cars, never the same one twice, she noticed. They had dinner at small intimate restaurants where the staff treated him with a deference that spoke of either fear or deep respect. He walked her to her apartment every night and waited until she was safely inside before leaving. Isabella was beginning to understand that in Matteo's world, everything was calculated. Every move was strategic. Every relationship was evaluated for risk. The fact that he was openly seen with her was sending a message she wasn't sure she fully understood. You're making me a target, she said one evening as they walked through Central Park. It was late, the park mostly empty except for the occasional jogger and the security presence she was beginning to recognize. Matteo's men, staying close but out of sight. You were already a target the moment you spoke to me in that parking lot, Matteo replied. At least now you're a protected target. Protected from who? From anyone who might think hurting you would hurt me. Isabella stopped walking. And would it? Hurt you? Matteo turned to face her, his expression serious. Yes, more than I'm comfortable admitting. The honesty in his voice made her heart race. Matteo, I know what you're going to say. This is moving too fast. It's too dangerous. We're from different worlds. All of that is true. Yes, but here's what's also true. I think about you every moment of every day. I worry about your safety, your happiness, your future. I find myself making business decisions based on how they might affect you. You've become my weakness, Isabella. And in my world, weaknesses get people killed. Isabella felt tears threatening. Then maybe we should... No? His voice was firm. I won't give you up. Not unless you tell me that's what you want. What I want doesn't matter. This isn't sustainable. I can't live my life surrounded by bodyguards and threats and... What if you could? Isabella stared at him. What do you mean? Matteo took her hands in his. What if I could give you a different life? Still teaching, still helping kids like Jamie, but protected. Safe. Secure. How? Marry me. The words hung in the air between them like a challenge. Isabella felt her knees go weak. What? Marry me, Isabella. Let me give you the life you deserve. Let me protect you the way you should be protected. You're insane. We've known each other for 3 weeks. I've known everything I needed to know about you since that first night at the restaurant. You're brave, compassionate, loyal, and strong. You make me want to be better than what I am. Matteo, you can't just... I can give you anything you want. A house, a car, security for your family, funding for your school programs. You could help more kids like Jamie, reach more students who need someone to believe in them. Isabella pulled her hands free, pacing a few steps away. You're trying to buy me. No, I'm trying to protect you. And if I can make your dreams come true in the process, all the better. What about love? The question came out smaller than she intended. Matteo stepped closer to her. What about it? Do you love me? Or am I just a project to you? Another problem to solve? He cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. Isabella, you are the first person in 20 years who has made me remember what it feels like to hope for something beyond survival. You are the first woman who has ever made me consider changing the fundamental nature of who I am. If that's not love, it's something close enough to terrify me. Isabella searched his eyes, looking for any sign of manipulation or calculation. All she saw was raw honesty and vulnerability that probably few people had ever witnessed. This is crazy, she whispered. Yes, it will never work. Maybe not. I could get killed. Not while I'm alive to prevent it. Isabella thought about her quiet life, her studio apartment, her predictable routines. She thought about David and his casual cruelty, about all the safe, respectable men who had made her feel invisible. Then she thought about Jamie, about the way Matteo had inspired him to believe in his future, about the way Matteo looked at her like she was something precious and rare, about the way he had protected her without asking for anything in return. If I say yes, she said slowly, what happens to me? Do I become someone different? Do I have to change who I am? Never. I fell in love with exactly who you are. I would never ask you to be someone else. And your business? Your other life? Remains separate from you. You'll know it exists, but you'll never be part of it directly. Can you promise that? Matteo was quiet for a long moment. I can promise that I'll do everything in my power to keep you safe from that world. But Isabella, you have to understand. Marrying me means accepting that danger will always exist. I can minimize it, but I can't eliminate it entirely. Isabella closed her eyes, trying to think clearly despite the chaos in her heart. I need time. How much time? I don't know. This is the biggest decision of my life. Matteo nodded slowly. Take all the time you need. But know that every day you're not under my protection is a day you're vulnerable. My enemies are already watching you, waiting to see if you're a weakness they can exploit. The weight of his words settled over her like a lead blanket. There was no going back to her old life now, whether she married him or not. She was already in his world, like it or not. What if I say no? Then I disappear from your life completely. You'll still be protected. I'll make sure of that. But from a distance, you'll never see me again. The thought of never seeing him again hit her like a physical blow. When had he become so essential to her happiness? Matteo, you don't have to decide tonight. But don't take too long. The longer this remains uncertain, the more dangerous it becomes for both of us. As he walked her home that night, Isabella found herself studying his profile in the lamplight. Strong jaw, intelligent eyes, the kind of presence that commanded attention without demanding it. He was dangerous, yes, but he was also the first man who had ever made her feel truly valued. At her door, he kissed her goodnight with an intensity that left her breathless. Whatever you decide, he said quietly, know that these weeks with you have been the best of my life. After he left, Isabella sat on her small couch in her studio apartment, staring at the simple engagement ring David had never given her. Now sitting in a jewelry box on her dresser, she thought about the life she had planned, safe, predictable, respectable. Then she thought about Jamie's face when he talked about his dreams, about the way Matteo had made that boy believe in his own future. She thought about the way Matteo looked at her, touched her, spoke to her, like she mattered, like she was worth fighting for. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Sleep well, beautiful. You're safe. Isabella smiled despite everything, warmth spreading through her chest. Whatever else Matteo Valentino was, he was a man who kept his promises. In a world full of people who had disappointed her, that meant something. As she drifted off to sleep, Isabella found herself imagining what it would be like to wake up every morning knowing she was protected, valued, and loved by someone who would move heaven and earth to keep her safe. It was a dangerous dream, but after years of feeling invisible and disposable, maybe dangerous was exactly what she needed. The next morning brought unexpected clarity in the form of a phone call that would change everything. Isabella was grading papers over coffee when her phone rang. David's number. She almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. Hello, David. Isabella, darling, I'm so glad you answered. His voice was smooth, charming, the voice he had used when he first pursued her. I've been thinking about you. Have you? Her tone was flat, unimpressed by his sudden interest. I made a mistake, Isabella. A terrible mistake. I let my father's expectations cloud my judgment about what really matters. Isabella set down her pen, giving him her full attention despite herself. And what really matters, David? You. Us. What we had together. What we had together was you using me as a placeholder until someone better came along. That's not fair. I was under enormous pressure from my family, but I've realized that I can't marry someone I don't love just to please them. Catherine Worthington is cold, calculating, nothing like you. She doesn't make me laugh the way you do, doesn't challenge me, doesn't make me want to be better. Isabella found herself remembering why she had fallen for David in the first place. When he wanted to be charming, he was irresistible. What are you saying, David? I'm saying I was wrong. I'm saying I want you back. I'm saying that if you'll forgive me, I'll stand up to my father and we can build the life we always talked about. Isabella felt her heart skip, not with love, but with the echo of old dreams. You're engaged to Catherine. Engagements can be broken. Isabella, I know I hurt you terribly, and I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm asking for it anyway, because I love you. The words she had longed to hear for 2 years. But now hearing them, Isabella felt nothing. No rush of joy, no vindication, no desire to take him back. David, do you know why I was at that restaurant 3 weeks ago? Because we were having dinner? Because I thought you were going to propose. I had convinced myself that after 2 years you finally loved me enough to marry me. I wore my best dress, did my hair, practiced what I would say when you got down on one knee. David was quiet. Instead, you systematically destroyed me in front of a room full of strangers. You told me I wasn't good enough, wasn't refined enough, wasn't worth enough to be your wife. Isabella, you were being honest. Maybe for the first time in our relationship, you were telling me exactly what you thought of me. That I was adequate for sleeping with but not worth marrying. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. And you know what? You were right about one thing. We are from different worlds. But the difference isn't money or social status. The difference is character. Isabella stood up, pacing to her small window as she spoke. You see, David, I've met someone else. Someone who values loyalty over social status, who protects the people he cares about, who sees worth in places you would never think to look. Isabella, if this is about that criminal you've been seeing, the words hit her like a slap. Of course David would know about Matteo. Of course he would be keeping tabs on her. How do you know about him? Word gets around. Isabella, you have to know that man is dangerous. He's not some romantic bad boy from a movie. He's legitimately connected to organized crime. People around him get hurt. People around you get hurt too, David. They just hurt differently. At least he's honest about what he is. Listen to yourself. You're defending a criminal. Isabella felt her anger rising. I'm defending a man who has shown me more genuine care and respect in 3 weeks than you showed me in 2 years. Care and respect. Isabella, men like him don't know how to care about anything except power and money. He's using you. Using me for what? I have no money, no connections, nothing he could possibly want except what? Isabella paused, realizing the truth as she said it. Except me. He wants me, David. Not as a placeholder, not as a convenience, not as someone to pass time with until someone better comes along. He wants me. You're being naive. No, I'm being honest. For the first time in years, I'm being honest about what I deserve. I deserve someone who fights for me, David. Someone who protects me, who values me, who would never humiliate me in public for sport. Isabella, please, don't throw your life away on some fantasy about a dangerous man. Come back to me. Let me make this right. Isabella looked around her small apartment, thinking about the choice she faced. She could go back to David, back to the safe, respectable life she had always planned, back to being with someone who thought she wasn't quite good enough but might settle for her anyway. Or she could step into the unknown with Matteo, accepting danger in exchange for being genuinely valued and protected. It's too late, David. You broke something when you humiliated me that night, and it can't be fixed. Isabella. Goodbye, David. I hope you and Catherine are very happy together. She hung up before he could respond, her heart pounding but her mind clear. David's call had been the clarity she needed, not because she wanted him back, but because hearing him try to win her back made her realize how completely she was over him. Her phone buzzed immediately. A text from Matteo. Everything all right? My people saw Richardson leave your building. Isabella stared at the message, a mixture of concern and irritation flooding through her. He was having her watched, protected even when she didn't know it. She called him back instead of texting. Isabella, are you safe? I'm fine. David called, wanted to get back together. A pause. And I told him it was too late, that I'd found someone who values me. Another pause, longer this time. Have you? Isabella took a deep breath. Yes, Matteo, if the offer still stands. Yes. Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll let you protect me. Yes, I'll take the risk of loving someone dangerous because the alternative is accepting someone safe who doesn't really love me. She heard his sharp intake of breath. Isabella, are you sure? Once we do this, there's no going back. I'm sure. David's call just made me realize that I'd rather live dangerously with someone who loves me than safely with someone who doesn't. I need to see you. Now. I'm at home. I'll be there in 20 minutes. True to his word, Matteo was at her door 20 minutes later, still wearing his suit from work, but looking less composed than she had ever seen him. The moment she opened the door, he pulled her into his arms and kissed her with desperate intensity. Say it again, he murmured against her lips. Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. Isabella, I swear to you I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret this decision. I know you will. Matteo pulled back to look at her, his dark eyes searching her face. There are things we need to discuss, practical things. Your safety, your family, how this will work. Later, Isabella said, pulling him inside. Right now, I just want to be with the man I love. You love me? Isabella smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. Yes, Matteo Valentino. I love you. Dangerous, complicated, impossible you. The smile that spread across his face transformed his entire being. For just a moment, he wasn't the head of a crime family or a dangerous man with enemies. He was just a man who had found something precious and was afraid to believe it was real. I love you too, he said quietly. More than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. As he kissed her again, Isabella felt the last of her doubts melt away. She was stepping into a dangerous world, yes, but she was doing it with a man who would protect her with his life. After years of feeling invisible and disposable, she was finally with someone who saw her as irreplaceable. Whatever came next, they would face it together. 3 weeks later, Isabella Martinez became Isabella Valentino in a private ceremony at Matteo's estate. It was a small affair, just his immediate family and a few trusted associates, plus Sarah, who was still in shock about the whole situation, and Isabella's parents, who had flown in from Arizona. Isabella's parents had been surprisingly accepting of Matteo once they met him. Her father, a practical man who had worked with his hands all his life, respected Matteo's straightforward manner and obvious devotion to their daughter. Her mother was won over by the way he looked at Isabella, like she was the most precious thing in his world. He makes you happy, mija, her mother had said the night before the wedding. That's all that matters to us. If they suspected what Matteo really did for a living, they didn't ask. Sometimes, Isabella thought, love meant trusting the people you loved to make their own decisions. The wedding itself was elegant but understated, nothing like the society extravaganza David would have insisted on. Isabella wore a simple but stunning dress that Matteo had chosen himself, and when he saw her walking down the aisle of his private chapel, she saw tears in his eyes. You're beautiful, he whispered when she reached him. You clean up pretty well yourself, she replied, making him laugh. Father Giuseppe, the elderly priest who had known Matteo since childhood, performed the ceremony with obvious affection for both of them. When Matteo slipped the ring on Isabella's finger, a stunning diamond surrounded by emeralds that matched the dress she had worn the night they met, she felt a sense of completeness she had never experienced before. I promise, Matteo said during their vows, to protect you, to cherish you, to be worthy of the trust you're placing in me today. You are my heart, Isabella. Without you, I'm just a man who exists. With you, I'm a man who lives. Isabella's own vows were simpler, but no less heartfelt. I promise to stand by you, to love you for exactly who you are, and to build a life with you that honors both of our dreams. You've taught me that I deserve to be valued, and I will spend my life making sure you know how valued you are too. When Father Giuseppe pronounced them husband and wife, Matteo's kiss was gentle, reverent, full of promise for their future. The reception was held in the garden of Matteo's estate, a sprawling property in the hills outside the city that Isabella was still getting used to. It was beautiful, but intimidating, with its high walls and subtle security measures that reminded her constantly of the world she had entered. But watching Matteo dance with her mother, seeing him laugh at her father's stories about fixing cars, observing how respectfully he treated Sarah despite her obvious nervousness, all of this helped Isabella believe that she had made the right choice. Jamie Rodriguez was there too, looking uncomfortable in his new suit but beaming with pride. Matteo had arranged for him to attend a prestigious summer program at MIT, and the boy could barely contain his excitement about his future. "Thank you," Jamie had whispered to Isabella during the reception, "for believing in me, and for bringing Mr. Valentino into my life. He's helping me see possibilities I never imagined." "You did that yourself, Jamie. We just showed you what was already there." As the evening wound down and the last guests departed, Isabella found herself alone with her new husband in the garden, the city lights twinkling in the distance below them. "Any regrets?" Matteo asked, pulling her close. "Only that we didn't meet sooner," Isabella replied honestly. "I wouldn't have been ready for you sooner. I needed to become the man who could deserve you first." Isabella looked up at him. This complex man who could be ruthless in business but gentle with children, who commanded fear from enemies but showed her nothing but tenderness. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we build a life together. You continue teaching. I've already made arrangements with your school for additional security. You help more kids like Jamie reach their potential. I handle my business and keep you safe while doing it." "And us?" Matteo smiled, the expression transforming his entire face. "Us? We love each other. We wake up together every morning grateful for what we have. We face whatever challenges come our way as a team." "It sounds too good to be true." "Maybe it is, but we're going to try anyway." As Matteo led her inside to their new home, Isabella marveled at how much her life had changed in just 2 months. She had gone from being humiliated and discarded to being cherished and protected. She had traded safety for love, predictability for passion, respectability for genuine connection. It wasn't the life she had planned, but it was the life she chose. And for the first time in years, Isabella Valentino felt like she was exactly where she belonged. Isabella stood in front of her new classroom at Jefferson Middle School, watching her students work on their latest assignment. The room was larger than her old one, with better equipment and more resources, improvements that had appeared shortly after her marriage, though officially they were attributed to an anonymous donor. Jamie Rodriguez sat in the front row, having skipped a grade and still managing to excel beyond everyone's expectations. His confidence had grown along with his academic achievements, and he had become a mentor to other struggling students. Mrs. Valentino, he corrected himself with a grin. "Can I stay after school today to work on my college application essays?" Isabella smiled. "Of course, Jamie. But remember, you have that interview at Columbia next week. Are you ready?" "I think so. Mr. Valentino has been helping me practice. He says confidence comes from preparation." Isabella nodded, still amazed by how naturally Matteo had taken to mentoring Jamie and several other students from the program she had started for at-risk youth. The Valentino Foundation, as it had become known, provided scholarships, tutoring, and guidance to children who needed someone to believe in their potential. After her students left, Isabella gathered her things and walked to the parking lot, where she found Matteo waiting by his car as he did every day. It had taken some adjustment, the constant security presence, the need to be aware of her surroundings, the knowledge that her movements were always monitored for her safety. But she had also never felt more protected or valued in her life. "How was your day?" Matteo asked, kissing her hello. "Good. Jamie got into Columbia. Early admission, full scholarship." Matteo's face lit up with genuine pride. "That boy is going to change the world someday. He's already changing it, one person at a time." As they drove home through the city, Isabella reflected on how much had changed in 6 months of marriage. Matteo had been true to his word. She was kept separate from his business affairs, protected from the darker aspects of his world while being supported in everything she wanted to accomplish in hers. Their home had become a sanctuary where he could let down his guard, and she could be completely herself. They had dinner together every night when he was in town, took long walks in their private garden, traveled to beautiful places on weekends when his schedule allowed. Isabella had learned to read the signs of when business was particularly stressful. The tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw would clench during phone calls, the extra security that would appear around their home. During those times, she had become his anchor, the calm center that reminded him there was more to life than power and territory and the constant chess game of his world. "I have news," Matteo said as they pulled into their driveway. "Good news or bad news?" "Good news. The Chicago situation has been resolved peacefully. No violence, just negotiation and compromise." Isabella knew better than to ask for details, but she squeezed his hand. "I'm proud of you." "For what?" "For finding ways to solve problems without anyone getting hurt. I know it's not always possible in your world, but when it is..." Matteo brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "You make me want to be better than what I was before. You make me want to find solutions that you could be proud of." That evening, as they sat together on their terrace overlooking the city, Isabella felt a contentment she had never imagined possible. Her life was different from what she had planned, more complex, more dangerous, but also more fulfilling than she had ever dreamed. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't met that night?" she asked. Matteo considered the question seriously. "You would have found someone worthy of you eventually, someone who appreciated your strength and kindness. And you? I would have remained what I was, successful, powerful, and completely empty." Isabella curled up against his side, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "I love you, Matteo Valentino. I love you too, Isabella Valentino, more than I ever thought possible." In the distance, the city sparkled with millions of lights, each one representing a life, a story, a choice that had led to this moment. Isabella thought about David, probably married to his cold, strategic wife by now. She thought about the life she might have had, safe, respectable, and utterly unfulfilling. Then she looked at the ring on her finger, felt the warmth of her husband's arms around her, and knew that she had chosen correctly. She had chosen love over safety, passion over predictability, and a man who saw her worth over one who had made her feel worthless. It was a dangerous choice, perhaps, but it was her choice. And as Matteo held her close under the starlit sky, Isabella Valentino knew that she had found her home at last, not in a place, but in the heart of a man who would move heaven and earth to keep her safe and happy. Some love stories begin with fairy tale meetings and perfect circumstances. Others begin with humiliation and heartbreak, with a moment when everything falls apart before it can be rebuilt into something stronger. Isabella's love story had begun with the latter, but it had led to something more beautiful than any fairy tale, a real, complicated, passionate partnership built on mutual respect, protection, and genuine love. And that, she thought as sleep began to claim her in the safety of Matteo's arms, was worth all the risks in the world. From that night at Milano's restaurant, when Isabella's world crumbled in front of a room full of strangers, to the evening 6 months later when she fell asleep in her husband's arms, feeling completely cherished, her journey was one of discovering her own worth. She learned that sometimes the most dangerous choice is also the right choice, and that love, real love, is worth fighting for, even when it means stepping into an uncertain future. Matteo had been right that first night. Isabella's strength had carried her through her darkest moment and led her to her greatest happiness. She had refused to be broken by cruelty, had recognized genuine care when it was offered, and had been brave enough to choose love over safety. In a world where power often corrupts and wealth often isolates, they had found something rare, a connection that made them both better people, a love that transformed them without requiring them to lose themselves. Their story was proof that sometimes the most unexpected meetings can lead to the most extraordinary love stories, and that the person who sees your worth when you've forgotten it yourself might just be the person you were meant to find all along.